What's up, everybody? Welcome to the In the Bag podcast number 20.
Big 2-0.
Yep. If you notice, I did the intro today. We're switching roles today. Freaky Friday style. I'm your host today. That's me, All Business Brad. And we're going to have a very special guest on today, Robbie. Who are we having on today?
We are having with us the blonde guy himself.
The blonde.
Here's our goal. We want to make sure that Trevor, by the end of this show, doesn't have a bad bag. You know, let's kill the narrative of Trevor's bad. I mean, if you think Trevor's bad, clearly you're not watching the monthly matches because the dude's lighting it up. So, and I like, as someone who's lost a hunter, it's like a transitive property, right? Like I need Hunter to be good because I lost a hunter, and if Trevor's being, it's just a thing. So anyways, we're here to make Trevor even better today. So excited to bring Trevor on and dive through his bag. It's very unique, very unique. And like Brad said, we switched it up today because Trevor and Brad throw different distances. So we wanted to try to match his distance a little bit. His arm speed is definitely way faster than mine. He's been playing much longer. And you'll see what was cool for me to see is, looking at his chart here, which you'll see in a second when he comes on, everything's way to the left side. There's not a whole lot of negative numbers that we're going to see. So we'll jump in with Trevor. We'll talk through some plastic. He has some pretty interesting plastic, and I'm sure, Robbie, you can talk through that a little bit with him as we're talking about stability and what place these discs fit in his bag. So let's jump in and talk with Trevor and try to find something to make this bag a little bit better. Come on, let's do it.
Trevor Staub, how's it going, man?
I'm good. Glad to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, you went from host to guest. How did that happen?
I just like to plug in around here. I'll get on any podcast I can.
So how many debate night appearances have you made?
Only 2 so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
and
fair.
No Plastic Addict yet.
No, I guess I'm still waiting. Well, the thing is, Silas has kind of pivoted that show to where he shows off collections now. And I don't really have much of a disc collection. The coolest stuff I have is probably in my bag.
I have thought about trying to get on Silas's show, but not trying to show off my full collection. Literally just my pig farm. These are all the pigs we have. So if y'all are interested and you're listening, let us know. And Silas, you obviously are listening because you have to edit this. So if that's what you're interested in, then let's do it, dude. It'll be a good time. Well, Trevor, we don't want to distract you with pigs because you don't have one of those in your bag, but you do have some amazing other discs in your bag. Would you describe yourself as I feel like Hunter is the one who gets the Innova Simp designation. Yeah. But do you feel like you're far off from that? Because you have some OG Innova in your bag for sure.
I'm definitely, I am an Innova simp as well. I started playing with Innova. I do think it's the best plastic on the market when it's at its best. And if I had to throw only one company, it would not be a difficult decision. I would be Innova all the way. I think that because I started playing with Innova and that's the era that I was watching disc golf in, there's a lot of nostalgia there. So that's probably where it comes from the most. But there's just a lot of molds that I grew familiar with way back with Innova.
And go ahead.
And I've seen it all now too. I've seen every brand now. So I know that my findings are based in somewhat fact. There is definitely a lot of nostalgia there, but I really believe that they have molds that are just unbeatable.
I would fully agree. And that's as the guy who is all about, hey, if you're not sponsored by them, be careful how much you advertise for them. At the same time, there are certain Innova molds that, it's just I want to replace you. But it's impossible. So we're definitely going to dive into that. For those, if we happen to have people, and you know what, this will be great because we so often watch people play on the internet and we feel like we get an actual guess of their game. But people, I don't think, realize that like Falling Creek, there are certain holes that are actually pretty far and like have some length to them. So people step up and watch hole 2 and they're like, well, obviously, yeah, like how do they not birdie it every time? Like that hole is pretty far. So let's have the players get to know you some like actual numbers for your game, because I feel like those aren't out there on the internet right now. It's just, watching, can this man par with a stake? He sure can. But how far does he throw? So let us know, how long have you been playing? And then golf distances, forehand and backhand.
Okay. I've been playing since, I believe, the summer of 2013, so nearly a decade now. Doesn't reflect in my skill. But, yeah, I got into disc golf really hard, and then high school sports came along, and it was kind of on the back burner for a while. So I really missed my athletic prime there. But golf distance, I love that you guys use that term, because it is, it is the true factor. Because like I actually think for me though, like golf distance is probably a pretty encouraging statistic, because I think my like max distance is not that much further than my golf distance. But I would say golf distance, backhand, let's go. And this is like as far as I'm throwing golf distance. Like a hole steps up and it's this far I'm reaching though with golf distance. Let's give it 390.
Okay.
Let's give it that. I may be able to push it out. If it gets past that, now I'm throwing like a really hard shot. But I think I can smooth a backhand, well thrown, and get it out there 390. So let's go there. Forehand, not so much. I would say my forehand golf distance sits about 300.
That's fascinating to me. But I like thinking back through and thinking through videos, that makes kind of sense. Like I feel like you're not the huge forehand guy.
No, it's
that's
not my game.
So Brad, you kind of shook your head. Yeah.
I will say, watching him play, he's being really generous. I would have said your golf distance is easy, 410. That's kind of where I would say.
I get really hesitant to get into that number. I won't even say it, that number, quattro. But I mean, I don't really know, because when I try and like, I don't ever really throw for distance. Like the last time I did was actually when we did the rangefinder video for Atlas on our Instagram, and I think for that video we were trying to throw pretty far up there. And like if I'm not trying to throw far and I just kind of throw a hard drive, I feel like I get it out there really far. It's when I like try to throw far that I'm like, oh, I don't throw far. That's kind of, that's kind of smooth as fast.
I mean, I definitely get that. Like stepping up when you say a hole is 390, the odds of you reaching it are very high. But if you said, oh yeah, this hole's 410 or 420, having a 10-foot putt feels like a little dicey on if it's actually going to hit. So I can totally understand that. And I respect taking some off for guarantee, because that's golf distance.
Yeah.
Like that's what we're asking, not, if I played this hole 10 times, 3 times I'd reach it pretty easily. No, we're looking for that 80 to 90% success. So I respect that. Now let's talk putting. Obviously, the Bogey Bros are known for being some of the best putters on the internet. And so when we lead into that, if we set you up with a stack of 10 steadies at 15 feet, 25 feet, and 40 feet, how many are you making from each station?
15, 25, and 40. I've actually had my best putting year yet this year, and that has probably nothing to do with the steady. It might a little bit, because I haven't changed, and that's a first for me. I guess this is probably the longest stretch I've stayed with a putter. But I think it mostly has to do with like the longer I've been in this scene, the less I've cared about missing putts, because you just do it too many times. So I've also stuck with a more repeatable motion this year too. So I would say like 15 feet these days, I'm 9 out of 10 pretty much every time. I'm not missing many of those. 25 feet, I'm probably hitting 7 out of 10, 6 or 7. 40 feet is actually a very good distance for me. I'm probably getting 3 or 4 from that distance. That step putt I'm pretty decent with from there. I feel like when I'm at 40 feet, I feel a lot better than at 28 feet.
Interesting. Yeah. I hear that. Like, it is when you play events, especially like, because we have a lot of tournaments that happen in our area, and we have a really good TD who runs most of them. So a lot of the times our circles are painted for events. So lots of courses in our area kind of have like permanent circles painted because there's always events going on. And yeah, when I step up and I see that putter landed like 2 or 3 feet inside of the circle, it's always like, oh, I'm probably not going to step it, but knowing that I could, way more relaxing. So I definitely hear that. Okay, so final question of getting to know you. Or your game, what would you say is the biggest strength of your game?
I don't know if I've ever been asked that. I think it's changed. I think when I'm playing my best disc golf, man, this is tough. I think when I'm playing my best disc golf, it is my ability to create shots out of nothing. I played in college. I played a lot of wooded golf in my life, and in college, I did a lot of scrambling, and particularly, I played a lot of doubles golf in college, which allows you to have a chance to try something extreme. And my best shots are just ones where I have to get a little creative, find a gap or a line. I'm pretty good at like forehand rollers out of the woods, overhand shots, just getting out of trouble. I would say like getting out of jail. That's probably my strength.
Huh.
Mostly because I find myself there a lot.
Yeah.
I can't really think. I mean, as far as anything else, I would say my biggest like improvement in my game, something that I used to stink at and now I'm very good at, is like 100 to 180 foot chip up shots, either backhand or forehand. I've gotten really good at those, and I used to be awful at them. So that would be another strength of mine these days. Would you accredit that to practice, or has there been a disc that came in your bag that you were like, I've got that one dialed now, and it just makes those shots easier? A little bit of, well, definitely not practice. I don't ever practice, but I think it's a combination of strategy and technique. And strategy being, I've been throwing the slammer for these shots, and it's a slower disc that doesn't like to glide a lot. And when I'm doing a lot of times with it, especially with the backhand shot, to just get a really repeatable shot, I'm loving a somewhat overstable slow disc thrown with hyzer that just dumps. You just start it like 10 feet right of the basket on hyzer. Just focus on hitting that target 10 feet right of the basket, and you're just going to dump it under the basket every time. So I think I've just changed my strategy. I've started fan gripping more, something I didn't used to do. And I've just simplified that upshot. If you try and throw an upshot from that distance and you're trying to throw a disc flat, you're playing with so many factors. Whereas if you just throw it with that hyzer, you're not throwing a wide hyzer necessarily. Like I said, you're just throwing something that's just going to fall out of the sky, basically. It's like you're just tossing it. That kind of strategy has really changed my upshot game a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
It's funny, Trevor, when you were like, hey, no one's asking me what my strength is, after like me and Trevor got a chance to play, just the two of us at our weekly the other day. And I would say your strength is definitely the under 7 speed. It's like all your putters and your mids, you're like so smooth with, and I feel like you're deadly accurate with all of them. So people... Yeah, I was going to say, people do say that I throw putters well. I'd agree.
Like I throw them far and drive with putters well. Because the art of the driving putter has kind of died down a bit. Like people throw zones a lot, but like, you know, Paul Macbeth got me into the driving putters because he used to throw S-line P2s. And like for him, it was just like a mid-range. And so I've always made that part of my game, is like having a putter that goes far off the tee, backhand, like hard drives. It's something that not a lot of people do, but I do quite a bit.
Okay. Well, let's dive into those putters, shall we? And check them out. All right. The putter you're talking about right now, if I had to guess, is either that Sky God 4 or is the San Marino AVR like your super flippy putter?
Yes. So the San Marino I've got here. This is like my understable. This is really old DX, beat up. It's not like insanely flippy. I'm only carrying 2 like driving putters right now. This one is not like, if I throw it hard with hyzer, it's going to get up to flat, maybe turn a little bit, but it's not like crazy flippy. I actually like having a putter like this for, I can throw this for like those softer up shots with hyzer and they kind of just push. So not even necessarily always turnover shots, but just like pushing hyzer flip type shots. But yeah, very overstable, pretty understable.
Okay. So when you, let's say you step up, you've got about 180, 190 foot hole, slow turn to the right. Is the AVR coming out there, or is that a forehand slammer?
If it's only 180, I'm gonna look to the forehand. These days, my forehand has gotten to the point where if the hole calls for it, especially from that distance, and as long as there's not trouble right, then yeah, I'm gonna go forehand there. I mean, that shot, like if I can face the target, I like that shot there. I probably would go a lot of times if it's a lot of times off the tee when I'm throwing it like a full power forehand, I'm gonna go with the socky bomb slammer, so something a little more stable.
Now, why do you make that designation of like off the tee if I have to go full power? Why the socky bomb over the traditional slammer?
The traditional slammer, I just don't trust as much for like, let me throw it. Because like when I'm throwing a forehand drive with a disc like that, I want to throw it with flat to a little bit of turn even, and I want to be able to trust it. The stock slammers, brand new, you can trust them, but I mean, I like to have them beat in anyways, and I'm more so going to use that disc for a shot that is going to go either dead straight on a forehand or more so a shot that's going to slowly work on anhyzer, that I'm going to start out to the right of the basket and just let it fall left. So when I'm throwing and 180 like that kind of shot, I'm gonna have to throw a slammer pretty hard because they're slow. So I want to be able to throw that socky slammer as hard as I can and just know that it'll bite at the end.
Interesting. And another thing to note for those of you listening you're familiar, like it's crazy to me. There's a generation of listeners now that when they hear the slammer and we're like the original slammer, the OG slammer, they're like, that is the socky bomb slammer. I know what you're talking about. Like that's where we're at in disc golf, unfortunately, but that's okay. So when I say real slammer, I'm referring to the OG one. But the OG slammer there's been certain runs of it that have been in premium plastics, like GBO had some lucid ones for a while. But you prefer them in the prime or it's like classic blend or something like that.
I have so I've had prime ones. I also have the one in my bag right now is a classic hard. That disc, so the normal slammer in my bag, and this is like a really new part of my bag that has evolved since I've gotten more familiar with like the touch forehands. Like that's something that did not exist in my bag before. But I like that normal slammer, the original one, to be my straight slammer anyways. So there's no point in me having it in a premium plastic because I know it's going to hold in the way I want it as a baseline. If they made socky bomb slammers in a premium plastic, I would have one in my bag because something that's meant to be that overstable, and the only reason it's in my bag is to be that overstable. I don't need it to beat in because I've got the other slammer for that. So if they made that in a premium plastic, I would have it. It gives me severe anxiety having a disc in my bag that's meant to be overstable in a baseline plastic. I do not like it.
That's understandable because exactly what you're talking about, that like I'm throwing a full power forehand tee shot with it. The first time that you smoke a tree with that, like all of a sudden that one has become less usable.
Yeah, it's a tough battle. I've got a few, and for that reason, I don't know if the socky bomb slammer will always be in my bag, but it's very unique. There's not a lot. I don't know if there's a disc like it that is that slow and overstable for an approach disc. It is pretty unique.
Oh, okay. Well, let's move on to your mid ranges because you have some unique mid ranges in there as well. You've got three. Really, if we want to count the Rock 3 as like the step sibling of the Rocks, you've got 4 Rocks in your bag. So the Rock 3 on the top end. What's the Rock 3 doing that your other Rocks aren't?
So my first 2 Rocks, I have that Ontario one. Really, I mean, it's a fancy disc. It's an Ontario Rock, but really it's there to be one thing, and that's a super flippy mitt. Like I could throw an uplink in there. I think before I had that, I just had another, like, there's always a beat up mid somewhere I can find. That's all that is really serving for me. The 12 time I've had in my bag for a while. At this point, that one is starting to kind of hyzer flip, and I can also throw that one flat and get a really long turnover out of it, and it's not going to come back. The Rock 3, I only had 4. I didn't have that in my bag for a while there because I was using the Rock 3 the wrong way. So the old Rock 3s, 1-time, 2-time Rock 3s, were pretty overstable. They had quite a bit of bite to them, and those are the ones I used to throw. The new Rock 3s are not that overstable, and I thought I just didn't like them at first. For that reason, because I was throwing them, expecting them to fight headwinds, get super hard left, be able to forehand them. It just wasn't happening. But this one is a 4-time, I believe it. It's got an Anthony Umbrella stamp on it, so it's pretty cool. But this is one of the newer runs, and what I've learned that I like doing with this disc is I can throw it hard and flat. Because I mean, one thing you need to know about my bag is I throw a lot of flat shots. I do not throw a lot of shots on hyzer, so I'm going to judge a disc a lot of times off of what it does flat first. And like this disc, I can throw it hard and flat, and it's just going to go dead straight because it has enough stability that it's not going to turn over, but it also isn't going to fade out on me. Another thing that I like to do with this disc, probably the most, is throw it on anhyzers and get these really great long turnovers that I can throw super hard and are never going to catch an angle and start going hard right. They're just going to slowly pan and then drop or come back a little bit. So an example is there's a hole at New London, hole 3, that is a long turnover shot with OB tight on the right. And this is a disc I can throw and get that huge long turnover out of, and it's just going to drop, and it's never going to dump towards that OB. So that's something I've learned to throw discs with a little more stability and actually use that stability to get straight to turnover flight paths rather than just wanting them to go left. And that's what this disc is doing.
Okay. Fascinating. All right. And then, I mean, like, fascinating because what I like here is the idea that I thought, like, it was profound. So I don't know how often you told that you said something profound, but I want to lean into, I thought I didn't like it, but it really was just approaching it incorrectly. Brad, has there been a disc that you feel like you thought you didn't like and you realized when you came back to it or you tried it again, it was like I just had the wrong expectations of this disc?
Is it bad if I say every disc I've ever thrown to this point? Probably.
No.
The era initially when I put it in my bag, like I think I watched Apollo's review of it, maybe. I'm not sure, but it was really flippy for him, and I expected it to be this like really flippy disc for me. It's actually not at all. It's pretty straight, but it does have a nice fade at the end for me. And I kept trying to turn it over, and I was having a hard time. And I took it on my bag for a long time, and then finally, when the Hades was kind of iffy for me, I started throwing it again, but I had a different expectation. So that's probably a big one for me recently. Okay.
So I want to encourage you, if you're listening, that is a very real thing, and it gives me the vibes of hearing Paul go through like his first in the bag with Discraft, where he was like, I had to just stop saying, oh, I'm trying to replace this T-Bird 3. I'm trying to replace this. I just had to approach the discs as what they were and build bags off of those shots. So I think that's super fascinating. You've got the drone in there, and I want to take a disc that's right above the drone, the Extreme. And because with how overstable, I've never thrown an Extreme, but how I've like heard them described, it doesn't really feel like a fairway because it doesn't want to go that far.
So the Extreme is in there. For me, that the disc from in that slot is there for one reason, and it's to be I'm always going to be dependable disc. There's nothing else in my bag. This slot is going to be when anything else fails, because at the end of the day, Saki Bomb Slammers are very stable, but I can roll them if I want to. Like, it's possible. Same with, like, I have at the most overstable end of my distance drivers, I've got like a PD2. I can roll that if I wanted to. The Extreme is there to be I will never turn over disc. I don't really care about the speed of it that much because when I'm throwing it, I'm never really concerned with like distance.
Yeah.
I could throw, because you could throw a disc like the Splice that is actually kind of wide rimmed and a little bit fast, or you could throw the Extreme, which is I think technically a 6 or 7 speed. I think it's a 7 speed, but realistically, they're not going to go that much further than one another. Like even though the Splice is way faster because it's just a disc that goes left. I searched a while for a disc in that slot that I liked. I used to throw the Enemy from Legacy. I could see myself going back to that disc. I actually liked it because it flew like a Firebird, but had a little bit of a deeper rim, which I need that for my forehands. I need that deeper rim. That's why I can't forehand like a Raptor.
Yeah.
I think the Captain's Raptor is a little deeper than Raptor, and that disc I could throw. I quite like it, but the Extreme for me is I just like I have an obsession with overstability in general because I throw so many flat to turnover angled shots. So I need discs that just do not care and want to get left. Like the ultimate disc I had like that back in college was an OG Glow H1 from Prodigy. A disc that is like the most overstable disc I've ever thrown in my life. But this Extreme is pretty close to it. I like being able to throw a shot like, oh, I can throw a forehand roller with this and it's just going to stay going straight the whole time. Or I can throw a massive Anheuser forehand and it's going to pan out of it. Like it's going to get out of that line. So it was just kind of an endless search until I found that disc for something that just would always fade no matter what.
Okay. So what's the difference between the Extreme and the drone then?
So the drone is a little bit slower, not nearly as stable. It's not even close to as stable. The reason I have the drone, I think the drone is a very underrated disc, but so mid-range discs don't really like forehands. Like I have another rock in my bag, the USDGC one. I've previously carried Wasps in that slot. It's just an overstable, like fast mid-range, but they don't like forehands very much. They don't really do well with them. Like, especially my forehand, they wobble, they're touchy. The drone is unique in the fact that if I have a forehand shot where I can't get there with a Saki slammer or something like that, the drone handles the forehand power really well, but still goes pretty far and has like a nice consistent fade to it. I don't pull it out a ton. It's also a disc I can pull out where like my other mid-ranges, even the more stable ones, don't fight wind super well, but the drone does. So it's kind of a utility disc. It's like a safety net in there. But I just don't think a lot of people give it the time of day because they just try to throw their zones like 350 feet like the pros do. And it's like, throw a drone. It's doing the same thing for you. It's going to glide a little bit more, but it's still going to bite at the end. It's a really good disc.
Yeah. So the drone versus like a Justice for you, is the Justice too close to like the Extreme? Feel like there would be too much overlap there?
Yeah. So I used to bag a Lucid X Justice, and the drone, the Justice, honestly, the reason I took out the Justice was actually because it was too close to like a Saki Slammer type slot. Because it's just so overstable that it just doesn't go anywhere. They don't go anywhere at all. So that's really the slot that bumped it out. It was like at one point I had Slammers, I had a Zone In, and I had a Justice, and I was like, is there really a need to take a step up? The drone for me was like a more of a step up in speed to where it made it worth it.
Yeah. Interesting. And that makes total sense to me. The only recommendation that I would make in mids is like, have you thrown like a Luster Champ Rock 3 or something like that?
I haven't thrown one myself, but Hunter has one, I believe, and I've seen him throw it. It's pretty stable.
So that, like, to me, that would be the only thing, because you talk about like your mids don't like to fight the wind. Instead of like, if you like the flight of a rock, I feel like it could be a nice alternative without having to go all the way to the drone or something like that. Now, I don't know, like forehanding it, I think it still has that touchiness of it, especially if you don't like smoothing the forehand, or if you have some natural ante on your forehand, especially when you're like going for distance. I could see the drone being necessary still, but maybe just as an alternative to like a USDGC rock or something like that. That's about the only hole that I really see in mid-ranges. I want to dive into distance drivers real fast because we could go long on this all day. So distance drivers, so so this is where you can get super nitpicky, right? Because the only duplicates you have in terms of molds are you technically have 2 wraiths in your bag. Now we could be the realists and say that you have a destroyer and a cloudbreaker, so you really have 2 destroyers as well. But Dismania will kill me for that, so I can't say that, even though it's the truth. So talk me through, you've got 2 wraiths in your bag. What's the difference between the 2 wraiths?
So one of the wraiths is a star wraith that I put in my bag. It's been in there for a good bit now. Ever since I left Dynamic, it's been in there, I think, because the wraith has always been my favorite disc, so I knew I wanted to get it back in my bag. But it's still in the process of being beat in to where if I throw it on hyzer, it might flip up the flat. But really what I like it for right now is kind of similar to the shot I mentioned with that Rock 3, where I can throw it flat and get a really long turnover out of it. The other wraith in my bag is that Pro Wraith, and that was like my quick solution for getting a beat-in wraith in my bag. And so that's a pretty flippy, that's like one of the flippier discs in my bag. That's a hyzer flip to turn type disc.
Okay. So differences between that and when you go all the way up to the Sheriff, which is usually pretty flippy as well.
The Sheriff is probably, it is the flippiest disc in my bag. The Sheriff is like, it's beat in now to where that is my, similar to where I like to have a disc that I know is going left no matter what. I like to have that with the disc that's going to go right. The Sheriff I can throw like so hard, like on a ton of hyzer way up in the sky left, and it's still going to turn over and fall right. It's that flippy. I also sneaky like it for, I don't generate a ton of power on my forehand, so I like throwing it for forehands, especially ones that are uphill, to where I can just throw it flat and smooth it, and I'll get a full turn out of it and get a lot more distance than I would trying to force something over. I just kind of let it do the work. It mystifies people a lot of times. They're like, how did you get that to go that far? You barely snapped it. I'm like, because it's the flippiest disc in existence. So that's kind of what that disc is for me. If I do throw a roller, I can roll it, but it is considerably the flippiest disc in my bag.
Okay. So we jump from the Sheriff to the Raider. What's that Raider doing?
So the Raider is that one I've had in my bag. That's maybe the longest standing disc in my bag, and that is kind of my hyzer flip to flat and then just go really far discs, like go really far straight disc. That's kind of the only shot I throw it for, is when I need to get a disc to go straight a long ways, like a distance shot. I can throw it very hard with hyzer. It'll pop up the flat and go dead straight. It is one of my weaker shots in my game because I'm not a great hyzer flip player, but when I can hit that one right, I think it's the only disc that I have that I'm comfortable getting it to flip up the flat every time. And I also do throw that one. That's probably my main like distance forehand disc too, because like I said, it's not super overstable, so it'll turn a little bit. But yeah, that one is kind of neutral flying at this point.
Okay. So flippy, it's a little flippier than that Wraith you were talking about, the Star Wraith that you have.
No, oh yeah, it's flippier than the Star Wraith. Yeah.
Not as flippy as the Pro, obviously.
No, yeah.
Okay, so we move from there. We won't spend a lot of time on the PD because it's a new Discmania PD. It's super overstable.
Yeah.
It'd just be doing that thing. Okay,
right.
So that's easy. PD2, exactly what you were talking about with the Extreme, but in a distance driver form, like it. Well, not the same thing as the Extreme, because I guess you said, yeah, you can roll it. So
yeah,
PD2, what's it doing?
So there's a couple spots. The only like spots in my bag that are kind of a revolving door are really the overstable ones, which is kind of typical for everybody. But that distance driver overstable spot, I've been kind of searching for a disc that I can consistently pick up, because like even like before I was just like my most overstable disc would be a destroyer, but sometimes finding a really good overstable destroyer isn't the easiest thing. The Excalibur is a fraud. So I went through that. That was heartbreaking. And then I've thrown forces, but forces can be frauds as well too. They can be very overstable, but you can get ones that flip up. So the PD2 I saw, well, I mean, I wrote PD2. Spoiler alert, it's an elixir from Innova. It's not actually a PD2, but it is. So I saw the run of elixirs come in, and I was like, okay, these look like the traditional overstable PD2s that I remember. Let me try one out. And it's like, yeah, it's very reliable. It's not certainly not like a meat hook by any means, but it's going left. I can throw flex forehands with it. It's good enough for that spot for right now.
Okay. So walk me from the PD2 then over to the Destroyer Cloudbreaker combo.
So the Destroyer and the Cloudbreaker are kind of similar right now. That the Cloudbreaker is the other distance driver slot in my bag that revolves a little bit, because I kind of keep one slot for like, oh, let me try this out. And the Cloudbreaker is one of the few discs I've thrown that noticeably goes faster than others. The discs that I've seen that happen with are the Cloudbreaker, the Cannon from Legacy, and the Nuke from Discraft. Those are the 3 discs I've thrown that I'm like, oh, that disc just goes far. So where I'm pulling out the Cloudbreaker for is a shot that I just needed to go a little bit further than normal, or just big flex distance shots. But it's kind of just a fun disc in there. The Destroyer I've had in my bag for a long time. It's my best distance driver. It's just gotten beat in now to where it flips up a little bit, so I can throw really big pushing hyzers that flip up a little bit and still fade. I can also crush forehands with it. It is just like a perfectly beat in Destroyer, but it's still reliable, but it has some gives to it now.
Okay. So, Brad, can you see possibly the train that I'm walking down? I feel like between the Raider to the Destroyer and the Cloudbreaker to the Wraiths, maybe not the Pro Wraith. The Pro Wraith feels like it serves a similar battle with the Sheriff, but not like still different, I'm sure. And you had mentioned the Pro Wraith was like a quick solution to beating in your current Wraith.
Right.
So are there ever distance shots where you step up and you're like, okay, is this a Wraith, a Destroyer, or a Raider? Like, are those 3 fighting themselves for your common distance shots?
Yeah. So my thing with distance drivers, and this is going to kind of go into our fairway discussion, but I reach for distance drivers a lot more than fairways. So therefore I allocate a lot more room in my bag for them, because I know that the distance driver is the one I'm going to pick up the most. I like having more overlap in that section than anywhere else in my bag, because I really believe that there are going to be days that a disc is just working for you, or a shot that you just think, that looks good for this disc. So while, yes, I could take at least 3 of those distance drivers, and like I would say the Cloudbreaker and the Green Destroyer have a little bit of overlap, and I would say that the Wraith, the Raider, those 2 can certainly have some overlap. There is that a little bit in the back, but I think that if I'm going to, because I get pretty nitpicky about not having too much overlap in my bag, but I allow myself to have it in the distance drivers because I know it's the disc that I grab the most during a round. So I want there, for 2 reasons. I want to be able to say, "Ooh, I'm just feeling this disc today. Let's go with it," or be able to switch off of one if I'm not feeling it. And B, if I lose a disc, it's probably going to be a distance driver. So if I'm in a round that matters and I lose a disc, I want to be, if I have, let's say that Raider, because it kind of is my most important disc off the tee, I'm going to want to back up for that.
Yeah,
so
totally.
that's kind of why there's that a little more overlap with the distance drivers, because effectively I could carry 3 or 4 distance drivers, but if I'm going to let myself have overlap somewhere, I want it to be with the disc I'm throwing the most.
Yeah. My question in that process would be not avoiding overlap in that sense. More so, if that Raider is the most important disc for you off the tee, why have a Destroyer in there as well when you could be beating in another Raider to try to fight that, or a Wraith, or...
Yeah, so the Raider, what I've learned from Trilogy Plastic is it beats in really fast, but then it stays at a point. So the Raider, brand new, the Raider is incredible. It is so good. It is, for me, it is like the Destroyer of my dreams, as far as like, not it destroys my dreams, but it is the Destroyer that I dream of. Like I love that disc brand new, but it's heartbreaking because it will beat in really quickly. and then it gets to that hyzer flip spot. But that's kind of where it sits. Whereas the destroyer is going to keep its stability a lot longer and fill a different gap. So if they made the Raider in a more durable plastic, like if Fusion didn't beat in as quickly, I could see myself throwing more Raiders. And I have in the past thrown multiple Raiders. Like, let me have a newer, more stable Raider, and then let me have some beat-in ones. And I may mess around with that because I have a ton of them. I have so many of them that I can filter into my bag. But I think that's the biggest reason is, like, I just know that at the end of the day, the Raider is going to beat into the spot that I have the one at now, and it's not going to take super long. And that's kind of where it's just meant to stay. Like Trilogy discs, you can't really lie to yourself with them and throw them once and be like, that's what this disc is meant to do, because it's not going to do it for very long. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to get to a spot and then become useless. They get to a sweet spot and they stay there for a really long time. I've had that Raider in my bag for the better part of 2 years now, and it's flown like it does now for a long time, over a year probably. So they have their sweet spot, but that's the difficulty with Trilogy. So that's kind of my thought process there.
It's totally fair. It's totally fair. That's always like, yeah, because I like I said, I completely understand, especially the idea of if I'm going to be throwing this disc a lot and I'm going to lose it during a round. Like, you never walk into a round going, man, I really hope I don't lose this. Like, I really hope I lose this disc. Like, if you're thinking that, you're a maniac. Or you run apparently a bigger retail store than Foundation, where you're like thinking to yourselves like, yeah, plastic just literally doesn't matter. So I'll just, anyways. So I'm with you on that. I mean, like, I don't have necessarily a ton of need for the number of pigs I have in my bag, but if I lost a pig mid round and I'm throwing it, all of a sudden, like, I would be in trouble for holes 14 through 18 if I simply didn't have it. So totally get that. We want to move down to fairways and dive into that. So, Brad, this is Freaky Friday. Walk us through the spot and hole you saw in the bag.
Okay, so if you can look here on the screen, if you all see it, and for audio listeners, I'll do my best to describe here. Number one, it's very interesting seeing someone like Trevor, who's played a long time, has faster arm speed. This graph is like basically, if you took every graph we've looked on and in the bag thus far and moved it 3 spots toward the turn area, like that's what we're looking at here. Everything's a lot faster, a lot more overstable than anything we typically look at. So I did have the opportunity to play with Trevor, and I noticed there's this one shot that kept like failing him because he kept switching which disc he was using, and that was like this. I don't even really know the distance, but it's like that fairway slot, and he needs something to like turn over, and he needs something to get right for his backhand. And he really wanted to come back to the left just a little bit, but they just kept letting him down. They just kept turning and wouldn't come back over. So if I'm looking at the graph here and like that 9-10 speed area, there's like a big hole to the right here, and that like one and a half like fade sort of slot with that disc. So I had Robbie help me. He has a little bit more extensive knowledge of discs, and like, can we find Trevor something here that he can rely on a turnover shot, but if he needs it to come back and not go right into the OB like it did multiple times when we played the other day, can we find a disc that will turn right for him consistently with little effort on that flat shot, but will come back to the left and fade a little bit for him at the end? So Robbie, why don't you tell us what you threw today?
Yeah. So before I dive into that, I want to ask a quick question about, similar to how we just talked through the Raider, Destroyer, Wraith, would you say that your T-Bird 3 Eagle Stalker combo is just a slower version of that same battle?
No, so these discs are a lot different from each other. The flight numbers are a little misleading because, well, first of all, the Maverick and the Stalker on the flight numbers there, very misleading. They're not that stable. The Stalker that I have in my bag is one I've had since 2013. So it's beaten a lot. Very, very understable. Can throw it with hyzer, and it's going to flip up and turn. That disc is effectively just my turnover fairway. The T-Bird 3 that I have, it was actually given to me, I believe as part of the Trash Panda disc exchange, maybe. Might have been. So it was beat in a little bit, so it kind of is just a dead straight disc. Now that Eagle, that's pretty new to my bag. And just because I was like, let me try out the Eagle again. It's a fun disc. Like Calvin Heimberg throws them really well. And I used to have one in my bag. And that Eagle is very stable. So right now, that's kind of the way they line up is like the Eagle, if I throw it flat, it's getting left pretty significantly. The T-Bird, if I throw it flat, it's going to go dead straight and maybe go a little left at the end. The Stalker is very understable.
Okay. So, and then the Maverick more understable than the Stalker?
No, the Maverick. So the Maverick I have it was like a chameleon run, I think. So it was a more stable starting out. In fact, it was like flew like a T-Bird when I got it. I've had it now for like a year and a half probably. And that sits above the Stalker to where if I throw it flat, it'll turn, but it won't like burn over. And if I throw it with a little bit of hyzer, it'll kind of just pop up and maybe ride a little bit. So it kind of goes Stalker, Maverick, T-Bird 3, Eagle.
Okay. Awesome. So the discs that I went out and trying to fill a slot of what Brad's talking about. Honestly, when we work with a lot of players, this is a type of shot that I think a lot of players could and should have in their bag. Is something that reliably turns and is going to have some fade back to it. Now, depending on your release point, that's going to change pretty drastically. So like for me and a hunter who like to throw things on stock, like on hyzer pretty much every time, in order to get that flight, it's going to have to be flippier. For Trevor and Brad who throw flat, it can be a lot. It doesn't have to be as understable, right? So the two discs I went out and tried were the Mad Cat by Lone Star Discs. If you're watching this podcast, you'll notice that I don't have it, but we'll get to that in a second. What a time. I go do field work once and it goes horrifically. So here we are. But then I also have the West Side Bear in the VIP ice plastic. So the bear, the prototype bears came out and they were pretty much just like a seasoned stag. Or like a fresh stag, I should describe it. Have you thrown the stag before, Trevor?
I haven't, but I've seen Molt throw it a bunch. And I mean, when he throws it, it's usually like his goes like flip up to flat and then fades at the end.
Yeah. So this is, EMAC describes the bear as the Stag Pro. And so I walked into that with like a little bit of a mindset of, okay, so that's how it's supposed to fly. Cause I also threw stags for a little while and then I spent the week with Molt and I realized I cannot throw stags like Molt does. And then I chucked them into a lake and said, peace out. So Trophy Lakes has all of my stags. So I through the Mad Cat and this bear, the flight numbers looking very similar between them. The bear has a little more turn than the Mad Cat does, but it also has more fade. So like the difference between turn and fade is the exact same. It goes to show you flight numbers mean a literal nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
So just get out there and try it, especially jumping between manufacturers. So I want to do like the same way Brad does his breakdowns. In terms of hand feel, the Bravo plastic by Lone Star, the only plastic that I've held recently that I would compare to that I felt equally amazing is Clash, their premium plastic. Like super gummy, but not like flopping in your hand, like not like a koi or something. Super workable. I literally could hold that Mad Cat in my hand and just push my thumb down on it and bend the disc. Like it was fantastic. Also had a really cool, like the wing on the top of the flight plate. Super cool. Felt like your thumb had like a place to kind of dig in. Fantastic. Hand feel, the Mad Cat beat the bear by far. The bear feels like a stock 8-speed. Like there's literally nothing special about this disc in your hand. Just gonna call it what it is. Brad talks these discs a lot nicer than I will. So yeah, the bear, nothing to write home to mom about. Then I go out to a field and I said, all right, I'm gonna throw them flat and hyzer. When I threw the Mad Cat on flat, it felt like the second that it left my hand, it started fading. Gave me very much the vibes of what your PD does.
Yeah.
Like just getting to the ground fast. Didn't care if it was in a headwind or what. No, because I threw them in headwinds, nothing. The bear, when I was throwing it flat, it almost felt like it was easier to grip lock the bear than most discs that I've thrown. Like for some reason, I was getting like a lot more snap out of the bear. And when I got that high speed hit on the bear, it would immediately start moving to the right. And I was like, oh no, because where I was throwing it, there was this big gorge off to the right. And I was like, oh, I'm going to lose this disc. Oh no. But it would turn for about 230, 240 feet. And then it would just flip to flat, like go back to flat, settle, and then just sail straight for another 100 feet.
Interesting.
And it did that 4 different times. Like, I just kept hitting it, and it would be like, oh no, she's gone. She would hit flat and just ride straight for like 100 more feet, 120. So it was consistently reaching like 350, 370 for me. The Mad Cat, flat, if I was hitting 300, I was feeling great about it. Like, that thing did not want to fly. So then I said, okay, let's go hyzer. My home. Mad Cat just died. Super overstable. Here we go. The bear would, if you hit it hard and hit it with some power, it would flip up even a tiny bit of turn, but then it would get back to that straight flight a lot faster. What I found the most interesting part for me was when I threw them on Anheuser, I took the Mad Cat, tried to throw it like a backhand roller, and it went about 280 feet and then flexed out of it entirely and flew into that gorge that I was talking about because I was coming back to where I was throwing. And that's why we don't have the Mad Cat anymore. So Lone Star, I'm not out here trying to say that the Mad Cat's bad, but it is certainly not the disc you're looking for. If you lose your PD, or if you're looking for a replacement to your Sexton, which is not as stable as you thought,
it's fraud.
I might check out the Mad Cat. Hand feel incredible. The art is hilarious. I think it's great for that. Just not this shot. The bear on Anheuser, if you didn't give it enough speed, it got really stable really fast. So it was a super fascinating disc to me because I don't know how you feel about speed control, Trevor, but I'm not someone who likes having to come off of my discs.
Me neither.
Because I feel like then I don't know if it's going to be more stable than I thought. What if I like smooth it, anything like that? What was so fascinating about the bear to me was I felt like the harder you threw it, the better it flew. So if you're in the woods and you're at New London and you're looking for those reliable, you really want to go lean into a turnover or something and not necessarily worry about like, oh, I need to get on this enough. Your Stalker sounds like it could do those easy turnovers for you.
Yeah.
This could be a disc that seasons in very fast and fills that slot extremely quickly. But out of the gate, like if you don't give it enough, I think it's going to be more overstable than your Maverick.
Okay.
Like it could fill a very beautiful slot between your T-Bird 3 and your Maverick right out the gate before you even get used to it.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that the mid-range or the fairways are the most fluid for me. It's tough. I don't work on that gapping a lot because I just, for whatever reason, I don't find myself reaching for fairways as much as I would think. Maybe it's just because I'm not like in love with any of them. That's probably what it has mostly to do with, because the one I like the most is the Stalker, and I do throw that one more than any of the others. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of like gray area when it comes to like that Maverick and that T-Bird. Like they're definitely on their deathbed.
No. So and we had talked before, you've held the bears around the warehouse before.
I love the way they feel.
Yeah. So if it's something to write home for mom for you, I think it's definitely worth the try. Like I said, the most fascinating part for me was I'm not a flat thrower. And I felt like every time that I threw it flat, if I got a hold of it, it would turn a significant amount and then just suddenly settle and boom, sail straight. Because there's like a little walking path in the field I was throwing over. And I kept thinking like, yep, it's gone. And then it would it's like it got on the path and just rode home.
Interesting.
For a long time. So I would definitely check it out. And then it's also a nice alternative if you fall in love with the bear and you're like, hey, time to replace this Stalker eventually. I could see you moving into a Stag as well as a same hand feel, but a flippier version of the Bear, just as an alternative. So that's my finding. Brad, does that sound like sort of what you were like thinking, or is it far off base?
No, I definitely think that, and again, I have like limited view. I'm basing this off of one round I played with him, but it did seem like a frustrating part of his bag right now, which maybe it is, Trevor, maybe it's not, but that does sound like something. Like I'm thinking of this exact shot on the hole that he threw, and he threw 2 OB to the right, but he was trying to get something to turn over, but not keep going right. Just give a nice turn to the right and then kind of finish up straight or even a little to the left. And I think that's going to fit right there. So, and especially if you like the hand feel of it, then I think it's worth a try for sure.
With that shot, yeah, I take kind of the wrong approach because I was trying to throw really overstable discs. Well, what I thought were really overstable discs. What ended up just being kind of overstable discs, but I was giving them just like a ton of flex when that's just not the smart line to throw there. Like you should throw a disc flat or with hyzer and let the disc work right before coming back. When I was forcing the disc over, and like I test the limits of disc stability all the time because I will throw just some steep angles with anhyzer, and I'll just like expect them to come out of them. But yeah, it's definitely something I need to work on for sure.
Yeah. Well, Trevor, we will definitely be willing to get you a Bear for you to try out. Would you be willing to come back on and share
Absolutely
how the Bear flies?
Absolutely.
Dude, awesome. Well, Trevor, thank you for coming on. Brad, it was a pleasure switching places with you. And if we do this again, I'll try not to go to that field where I can lose discs before I'm even like, before the episode even starts, because that's not a good setup. Awesome. Well, Trevor, we look forward to having you on a future episode, man. And until then, yeah, good luck on getting on Plastic Addicts and complete the sweep of your Foundation podcast network.
Hopefully it'll happen.
Brad, I got to be honest with you. I truly did feel like a failure in the field when I was like, when it went out, and I was like, "You're kidding me." That is definitely, oh no. And I just watched it fade out into existence. I spent like 30 minutes looking. I met a new guy who just started listening to the podcast, and I was like,
Nice.
"Hey man, you're gonna hear me talk about this in this episode." And we looked for like 30 minutes. Couldn't find that madcap. So
Dang. That's rough. I can say I pick an area where I really can't lose something on purpose, and that's where we have like a little sports complex here. There's like some football fields and like a soccer field, so I try to throw over there so this doesn't happen to me. No gorges, no valleys, no water for this reason. So, hey, I appreciate you. I always have a lot of fun throwing, so at least hopefully you had some fun doing that.
Oh yeah, I like. I'll be real. That slot for me, I don't know that the Bear fills that slot for me, but it's certainly the weakest part of my bag right now. Is that turnover slot, and the hole that I lost the Mad Cat on is probably my biggest trouble hole on that course. And so I was like, the Bear flew really well for me on that hole. So it could be a win in that aspect, but yeah. Overall, excited. Yeah, I was excited to try it and look forward to future episodes. I think it opens the door for us to bring on people with some bigger arms as well, so we can try this again in the future.
Right. And, I felt good because, number one, looking at Trevor's, like my disc bag, it was intimidating for me at first because, I know all of these different rocks are significant and, just there's some depth that I'm missing because I haven't been playing that long. But I did feel like just looking at this from like a statistics, like graph sort of level, I did have an idea of where we could go. And it did feel good that I'm like, I think I know what shot he could use. So hopefully it does work, and then I'll feel really good about myself. If not, we just won't talk about it anymore, and I'll still feel good about myself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key. We always want to feel good about ourselves. So Speaking of feeling good, what's new in the warehouse?
So new in the warehouse. So when this releases, Razor Claw 3 has come out. So those are probably gone. I hope you got one. If not, then hopefully they'll re-release something through the Sky Gods. We'll see. But hopefully those released and everybody got one. Ironically, this is not planned, but our Lone Star disc shipment finally arrived. Those are up now when you're listening to this podcast. Check it out. Got a bunch of different molds. I think we have one of every mold at least that they have out now. Some of them feel really great. Some of them I'm on the fence about, but it may be just because I don't like the feel of the plastic. Yeah. But some of them feel really good. And, just to be a troll, I am going to throw the armadillo for like a month to see if I like it, mainly because Robbie said he didn't like it. And I just feel like that slot, I've got to be oppositional to you. It's like pig versus zone and then armadillo versus bird,
versus
maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or polecat. Yeah, that's a good point. I did throw it into a couple walls and it did taco a little bit. So it's going to be fun.
I love it. Well,
yeah, a lot of Discraft that's still going up too. We've got a bunch of like really swirly ESP, like meteors and scorches and onyxes, Hades, Zeus, you name it. A ton of cool plastic going up there too. Don't think we'll have our Castoplast restock by then. We may have our Discmania restock, hopefully. So just keep an eye on the site. There's always new stuff going up, every day of the week. That's just some highlights for you.
New stuff going up and new stuff going in your bags, hopefully. And we want to make sure that as we're approaching this, if you guys enjoyed today's episode and enjoyed that sort of difference with Trevor being on here, feel free to let us know. Leave us a review. It always helps. And we just, once again, our hope and our dream here is that you guys are approaching the game maybe a little bit differently and have some more confidence before you step on the tee. Because we want to make sure that when you're building your bag, you remember, if it's good,
I'm going to let you say it, Robbie. It's Freaky Friday.
Oh, yeah. So you set me up. Ooh,
yeah.
We juked you. We juked you.
Ready? All right. So, Robbie, when you're throwing the bear or something else, I just want you to remember, if it's good,
keep it in the bag. We'll see you next time.